This is the Real Brand Podcast. Welcome home. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're here with Mr. Thomas Ray Garcia. He's the founder and executive director at the College Scholarship Leadership Access Program, or CSLAP. He's also authored a book that has just recently been released. He's an educator with a passion for leadership. So just like to welcome you, Thomas. It's good to have you here. He's homegrown. That's one of the bigger things to mention. He's from Pharr, Texas. Graduated from PSJ North High School, class of 2012, right? Is that right?
Yes, PSJ proud. And thanks so much for inviting me on, Samuel. It's great to be here with a fellow PSJ alum and talking about what it means to be from the Valley.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're doing here. A little bit of a backstory. I remember when you used to come to my high school, T-STEM, early college high school. I mean, I'm the graduate from the class of 2015, so I imagine maybe in 2013 or 2014, you would come to some of our classes to give presentations. And it's funny, how things turn out, because I remember back then I would listen to you and I'd be like, oh, that's cool. This he's from PSGA North. And at that time, I remember you mentioned your journey at Princeton University and how you had come back and you were, I think at that time it was still in development, right? The program that you were doing for scholarship access. And all this time later, we're here talking about it. So it's been a journey. Tell us what you've been up to between then when you were getting off the ground and now. Obviously, you have that book out. But before we talk about your book, what have you been up to? What has been on your agenda these last several years?
Well, Samuel, it really warms my heart for you to share that you remember those presentations. I think it speaks to CSLAP's longevity in our community. Just recently, we celebrated our 10-year anniversary. So we started back in 2013 when I was a college freshman. I graduated from North in 2012. I was a freshman at Princeton University, and I was debating, what do I do? I don't know what to do with this newfound opportunity in front of me. Now, I was working so hard to get into college that once I was there, I didn't realize what the next step would be. I just thought, let me spend 4 years here, let me figure it out. The answer came in my first semester when I was getting texts and phone calls from my friends at PSJ North. They were asking me about the college application process, what it was like to apply out of state, how did you win the Gates Millennium Scholarship, and many other basic questions that I thought the Go Center might have been able to handle. It turns out that the same issues I experienced when I was a high school senior, they were experiencing as well. And although I had graduated, overcome a lot of last-minute deadlines, found information at the right time, the right place on my own, I figured my friends now need that mentor in order to take them even further. So I approached Dr. King, our then superintendent at PSJ, back in 2013, and I asked him, can I come back to PSJ now, even without my degree, and make a difference in the realm of college readiness? Here's what I wish I would have had: classes, mentorship, information early. That's where I gathered a team of my friends from PSJ North to create CSLAP. Back then, we were a volunteer-led summer institute, and that's what we were promoting at T-STEM at the time. From 2013 to 2017, we came back from college and hosted hundreds of hours of programming on college essay writing, financial aid, winning scholarships, showing you what it's like to go from PSJ to a college, no matter where you're going, whether it's local, upstate, or out of state, and keeping in touch with you throughout the school year. That was the beginning of CSLAP. Then I became a high school teacher. My first job out of college was teaching at PSJ ISD, and I was at the CCTA campus on Old 83, College Career and Technology Academy. It was a unique course called University Scholars, where students would bust into me from the primary high schools in PSJA. And that was CSLAP, but year-round for 9th and 12th graders. Then, after that course, I gave that curriculum to the district for them to continue and implement a lot of our curriculum in their college readiness programming. I created a nonprofit. CSLAP is now a 501c3, and now we assist school districts from the outside in, where we teach lessons on college access, whether it's during the instructional day on campus, after school, or hosting free summer programming for students. We also grant scholarships. We also make sure our students graduate from college on time. We also work with parents and students one-on-one on both the college application process and graduating from college on time. So it's been a real journey to go from a school district program to now a nonprofit operating independently and celebrating 10 years of good work in our community. When I was looking at our data just last week, I saw that we have directly impacted 1,421 students, which means they've attended over 3 workshops or 2 one-on-one sessions, or they received a scholarship from us. And that doesn't include the many students who might have attended some of our info sessions like you did to learn more about what is CSLAP, what is the concept of coming back to your community after you graduate from college and trying to make a difference where you came from. That was the spirit that we had back when I was a college student. I wanted to come back to PSGA and give back in some way, shape, or form. CSLAP was my way to do it. And now my main job is to give young students a platform to give back to their school districts. So college students and graduates can come back through CSLAP and give back to their alma maters in any way, shape, or form, whether it's helping students apply to college, whether it's offering them civic engagement opportunities, or whatever gap they felt was missing when they were students. Now they can come to CSLAP and we can work with them one-on-one to implement that programming in the community. So I'm really grateful to do this kind of work.
Wow. Well, and you mentioned that this originally started at PSGA. You spoke to Dr. King as a college student yourself. Is that correct? You were still going to school, getting this thing going.
Yes, I had one foot in Pharr, one foot in Princeton. It was hard to carry the borderlands with me initially. I wanted to go away for college. I wanted to start a new life somewhere else. And then at Princeton, I realized, no, this is actually why I'm here. I'm here to share the wealth of information and privilege I have here and bring it back to my community. A motive I still live up to this day that I learned when I was a freshman at Princeton was the informal motto of the university. What does it mean to be a Princeton student? You know, I'm the first in my family to go to college and a low-income college student. And I want to underscore that I was an outsider on campus. I wasn't supposed to be there. On the page, that's why in high school, I wasn't given a lot of resources up front from our counselors because I was one of those that wasn't supposed to go to college. So why waste time one-on-one telling him about Princeton, for example? When I Googled how to get into Princeton when I was a freshman in high school, I learned if I were to get in, I would actually go for free because of my low income. They granted every family they made less than $40K in household income a free full ride in grants. So that's what made me work hard to get there in the first place. And once I got there, I decided I have to pay this back somehow. So when my friends were messaging me, how do I apply to college in the first place? I knew right away, I got to fill in these gaps and make sure they don't fall through the cracks like I almost did.
That's a really mature way to think starting off as a high school freshman, so you were trying to get into Princeton. For those 4 years you worked on it, you did. And when you got there, you realized that you needed to go back to take care of the kids that were, I guess, in your shoes, huh? The ones that were the kids that were on the same path that were trying to find a way. You needed to help them get there, an easier way to get there, huh?
Exactly. And when I became a freshman at college, the informal motto of the university, which they proclaimed again and again at our ceremonies and inductions, was Princeton in the nation's service. Whatever you do after college, be in the nation's service, uplift this country. When I graduated, they modified that in 2016 to Princeton in the nation's service and the service of humanity to accommodate the fact that we send our students everywhere, not just here in the United States. And I carried that with me. I wanted to make sure that whatever I did after graduating, I was dedicating my life to service. And to me, in K through 12 education, that is reaching students where they're at. That's working in the communities, talking to students who otherwise aren't thinking about college. CSLAP's mission is now college access for all, which means we understand not everybody's going to go to college, but we're not going to write you off just because on the page you're from a certain zip code or come from a single parent household like I was, or you don't make enough money. We want to make sure all the opportunities are afforded to you. And then with all the information in front of you, you can decide which is the best pathway for you.
So when you're at Princeton and you have this mission and this idea, why the Rio Grande Valley? I mean, this type of situation or college access could be an issue anywhere in the nation, right? I mean, as some people like to say, you made it out, right? So why come back to the Valley specifically and help the kids here?
Yeah, there's 2 reasons, I think. When I became a freshman, I did get involved in some college access opportunities on the Northeast. You know, Princeton neighbors Trenton, the capital of New Jersey, and Trenton has a lot of underserved students. And I was working with them both in tutoring and in college access opportunities, and I was doing important work. I didn't quite feel fulfilled, though. I also felt like there were so many programs in place already in this region, not just in New Jersey, but in New York and so many other Northeastern universities, that I didn't quite feel that what I was doing was unique in that way, or I could have been easily replaced and someone else was going to come in and help these students. But turning back to the Valley, I realized there aren't a lot of opportunities for one-on-one college coaching or for students who want to get info early on which pathway is best for them, simply because of capacity issues. We have large public schools. PSJ North, I graduated with over 500 seniors. Realistically, one college counselor can't meet the needs of every single one of those students, and you have to make choices. So we wanted to make sure that we could work with local schools here, given what we knew about the Valley, to increase that capacity and reach everybody. And the second reason was, in college is where I found out what it meant to be from the border. I was born in McAllen, raised in Pharr, and I grew up a white-skinned Mexican. But growing up, I was never conscious of feeling othered, or people claimed I wasn't from here or asked where I was from. It wasn't until I went to college in the Northeast where I felt, hey, I'm not either Mexican or American. I'm Mexican-American. Plus, I'm Mexican-American from the border. And that means something different than to be Mexican-American from Houston or Los Angeles. I went to this meeting my first semester at college at this organization called Latinos y Amigos. And it was at this social I learned, wow, I am really different. And I have to use something in that difference and make a difference at home. I was walking around meeting Latinos, and they were really jubilant when they saw me. They said, "Oye, great to see you, amigo," like over the top. And I noticed they kept on calling me amigo. And I was like, oh, I guess that's just what you do at Latinos y Amigos. But then I noticed they weren't doing that to everybody. They weren't doing that to the brown-skinned Latinos, to their buddies they already knew. And then I found out, basically, they think I'm someone's guest. They think I'm an ally. They don't think I'm Latino. I'm one of the amigos. So even when I introduce myself as Thomas Garcia, I'm from Pharr, which is 10 miles from the border. They didn't quite understand what that meant. The border wasn't quite on the news yet. There wasn't a lot of knowledge about what it meant to be from the United States-Mexico border. People didn't really know what the Rio Grande Valley was, even the Latinos from Texas. So I had to justify, here's why I'm here, and here's why I am Latino enough. And so now in CSLAP, part of what we do in addition to college access is talk about identity, because it's going to hit you no matter where you go to college. You're going to be 18 to 22. You're going to be learning what it's like to talk about yourself for the first time to people who might be from other areas of the country. And suddenly you realize what it means to be Latino when you have to justify, what does it mean to be Latino enough?
That's interesting, and it's one of those things that you needed the perspective. Then, huh? You had to get out of the region to figure that out, right? To learn about yourself, or to realize where you are, who you are.
That's where I learned the beauty of the Valley. When I was a high school senior, I wanted to get out. I wanted to leave and stay gone. When I was in college, I realized how beautiful and complex our region, our culture, and our history is. And it's hard to see that from the inside out when that's all you know. But then you leave to the Northeast and you realize, wow, there's rich history everywhere, but it's very unique along the border. When you have Mexican history, you have United States history, and then those two histories merge together. And you have regional and local events like the Pharr riot that defined our hometown in 1971. It turns out our hometown was the site of a police shooting that shot and killed a young man named Alfonso Flores, and that led to the election of the first Mexican-American mayor in our town. I had no clue about that until I went to the Northeast and someone told me about it. And I figured, man, if these people in the Northeast are telling me about my hometown and about Chicano movement history, maybe I should go back to the border and learn more about it myself.
And that's exactly what you did, huh? Now you find yourself here, you started CSLAP, and here we are, right? You've authored a book now. So before we talk about your book, let me just ask you if there's any high school students out there, 9th, 10th grade, well, let me ask you, how soon can somebody get involved or have access to CSLAP? Is there a threshold or is there a qualification?
We work with both middle school and high schoolers, so not young at all. We'd like for parents to reach out to us. They can reach out to us at info@cslapofficial.com. They can visit our website, cslapofficial.com. They can also reach out to me at 956-533-6156. We work with parents, students individually, and we also have a plethora of free programming that students, no matter their age, can attend, whether it's after school or during the summer.
Okay. And for our parents listening, what type of student would be a good candidate for this program for CSLAP?
We work with students from all backgrounds, from those who might be in the top 10% to those who are still deciding whether college is a good fit for them or not, no matter what their grades are. I enjoy working with students who might be on the cusp of deciding whether college is the right pathway, at least initially, because then I get to lay out all the opportunities in front of them that they're eligible for. We don't write anyone off. It doesn't matter where they're coming from. I trust that they're going to make the best choice possible for them once all the information is presented to them. And I love working with families to clear away that path. I understand what it was like to be in their shoes. My mother didn't go to college, and so she wanted the best for me. She just didn't know which pathway that meant. And so sitting in front of a family and letting them know about everything possible for their child, that's beautiful for me. And that's my favorite part of the job.
Okay, nice. Thank you for that. I also saw that you had run for state government. Is that true? Tell us a little bit about that. How did that go?
Yes, in 2022, I ran for the State Board of Education District 2. I think the short version is after so many years of working in college access and in K through 12 schools, I have seen so many systemic failures for our students. What CSLAP does is fill in gaps. If you don't have the right information at the right time, we'll fill in that gap. You don't have a mentor, we'll fill in that gap. You don't have enough money to go to college, we'll fill in that gap. But there's only so many students we can impact as a 501c3 nonprofit here in the Valley. During the pandemic, CSLAP grew. We were literally saving lives. Some of our college students were reaching out on the border of being homeless, of starving, or their families were getting sick and they didn't know what to do. And they reached out to us for that one-on-one assistance. And that's when we weren't just doing college access anymore. We were doing humanitarian work. I witnessed how my students were struggling during the pandemic, and I felt really powerless at that point to do much. I think there were a lot of errors made at the national, state, and local levels in terms of handling COVID-19, but especially how we handled K through 12 education at that time and how we failed a lot of our parents and students. So when I learned in November 2021 that our current State Board of Education member, Ruben Cortez, was going to vacate his seat to run for State House, I saw that as an opportunity to meet the moment. And keeping in mind that Princeton spirit of service, I was weighing my options. I was only 28 at the time. No one had known me as a political figure. I never would have thought I would run for office. I just figured the way to make a difference at the state level is to fill in these gaps permanently. That means I have to be in this 15-person board, and the State Board of Education is not well known compared to Congress or district attorney or these other races on your ballot, but it has such an undue influence on our schools. It determines what the teachers teach. It determines what the students learn. There are executive functions where board members can come into their districts and listen to what's going on the ground and then advocate to the state legislator, to the governor to try to make that change. There's so much you can do. And I figured through CSLAP, I was in a unique position because this is a completely volunteer position at the State Board of Education. You don't get paid for it. So you're expected to have your 9-to-5 job, your family, your personal life, and then represent 2 million people on the side. But through CSLAP, I'm in schools almost every day, either myself or my staff or working in local schools doing K through 12 education work. So given that, I thought I would be in a unique position to be a great representative. So I threw my hat in the ring in the Democratic primary. It was a 5-way primary. I came in third. I didn't advance to the runoff. I missed it by about a point. And I learned a lot along the way. I learned that even though I didn't win, I could still make a difference through raising awareness about, first, what the SBOE is, 2, advocating on the issues I care about, which is mental health, parental involvement, increasing our literacy standards, making sure that we're actually teaching 21st century standards in our curricula. When CSLAP teaches in an English classroom, we see firsthand what students are learning. When students come to us and say, I want to major in computer science, but my school didn't offer it or I didn't teach it well, so now I have to change my major. I have to change my life trajectory. We see what we got to change in our local schools. So I've learned so much from our own students and parents over the past 10 years. I figured running for office now is the right way to go. Although I came up short, I remain an advocate about the State Board of Education. I try to raise awareness on the ground about advocacy efforts at Austin and locally, how parents can get more involved in their students' education, and how even as young people, high school and college students, you can still contact Mr. LJ Francis, who's the current State Board of Education member for our district, and let them know what you think about what's going on in your school so they can listen to you. So I'm all about youth empowerment. Whether I won or lost, I was going to make sure young people have a better voice at the state level. And that's what I continue to do to this day.
Well, and it's apparent, it's obvious that you have a strong dedication to making a difference, both in the Rio Grande Valley and in Texas. So that's definitely commendable, and it's refreshing to see that type of dedication to make the change here, right, locally. It's a lot of us try to get out, as they say, but to see someone come back and do it, accomplish the things that you have is refreshing, and we appreciate that. So we thank you for the work that you've done here. And with that in mind, switching gears a little bit, in the midst of the CSLAP, in the midst of running for State Board of Education, being a teacher, it sounds like at some point through the cracks, you were also authoring a book. Is that during balancing everything else? There was a book that you were working on. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you come to become an author? And tell us about the experience of writing your first book.
Right. I often tell my students CSLAP is all about storytelling. One of the main works of art that we do is the college admissions essay, where we empower our students to tell their stories to get into college. And once they're there, they get to develop their identities along the way. So naturally, I wanted to tell my own stories. In 2015, when I was a junior in college, I started writing stories about the U.S.-Mexico border. I think in large part to the narratives that were being projected about the border around that time. During the 2016 presidential election, that is when we started to see the border on the news much more than before, with these narratives that this is a crisis zone, that there's a lot of problems down there, it's very dangerous, and reducing us to a single narrative that was politically expedient for certain politicians. And suddenly, when I was at Princeton, I became an expert on the border. Everybody started asking me, what's going on at the border? What do you know what's going on there? And suddenly, all the beauty, the history, the complexity of my home that I was proud of, that I started telling my friends about throughout my 4 years there, got reduced to defending the border against these narratives that were being projected. So I figured through fiction, I could start writing stories that represent the best of us. I started writing stories about certain landmarks here in the Valley. I started with the Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge in my first short story, Seventh Man, about a group of cross-country runners running along the Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge. And then I wrote a short story about La Lomita Chapel. And then suddenly I just started writing more and more about the Valley. And I moved away from very specific locations to very specific situations. So then I started writing stories through the lens of an undocumented immigrant, through the lens of a child finding a drone in a field and wondering, what the heck is this? And so many other stories that I wanted to keep true to what it meant to be from the Valley. Because when I was in middle school and high school, I loved the books we read in English class, but not a lot of them were by Mexican-American writers, much less local authors. So I didn't learn what it meant to be from the border till I got to Princeton, when I started investigating our local history in addition to Mexican-American authors. I wish I would have read a book like The River Runs when I was in high school. And I titled my collection of 11 short stories The River Runs because in each of those stories, literally the Rio Grande appears in some way, shape, or form. And also it's a metaphor that these stories don't shy away from the fact that a river runs through our community. That's a border. And what does it mean to live along the border? So each story tackles issues like immigration, like the color of your skin and how it impacts your identity, what it means to be from the border and then leave for college and then straddle the identity of being an Ivy League student and a fronterizo, a borderlands man. What does it mean to mix and mingle with undocumented folks, with documented folks? There's even a speculative fiction story in there about El Paso in the year 2048 when the rivers dried up. And what does that entail for our community when there's no more border? So each story, I think, imagines what could be, and there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of fantasies being projected about the border on the news all the time. And a lot of these fantasies become reality in the form of increased militarization, increased funding toward the border for certain activities or certain types of equipment. I think fiction can do the same thing if given the right audience. So I hope a national readership can take hold of The River Runs and through each story relate to the characters and understand, oh, that's what it's like to be from the border, or that's what it's like to be Mexican American. Oh, I didn't know about that. Maybe let me think about that concept a little more. And I hope it brings more humanity and compassion in the process.
Nice, nice. Have you had any opportunities to publicize the book on the other side of the checkpoint on the outside the valley?
Yes, I'm working on that actually for July. And it's funny, I'm a real numbers guy. I started analyzing who actually visits my website. I started looking at our analytics and I saw that in the month of June 2023, about half of my website visitors are from Mexico, from Reynosa, from Mexico City.
Really?
And they're looking through my website and they're clicking BNN, Amazon when on my author page. So they're going to the book websites. So I think it is attracting a international audience in that way. And I'm really happy because I think whether you're on the Mexico side or United States side, you're going to resonate with these stories. It's all about what it means to be in between. And so if you understand what it's like to be in the United States, but you're a Mexican national, or maybe your parents are from Mexico and you grew up here in the US, you're going to see a lot of that in your household anyway. And so to see it represented in fiction, I think it resonates with a lot of people.
Well, we can't wait to see that as a summer read, right? Or a class assignment here in our English classes around the valley. That'll be really exciting to see our students, reading The River Runs. So where can we find a copy of it? If somebody wanted to purchase this book, where can we find it?
Yes, it's available for purchase on barnesandnoble.com, Amazon, bookshop.org. Here in Hidalgo County, it's available at the McAllen Heritage Center in person. It's also available in Brownsville at Buo Bookstore, and it's slowly matriculating into local Barnes & Noble stores. I'm also carrying copies of the book always on hand, so people can reach out to me directly at Thomas Ray Garcia online, and we can arrange to meet up so I can sign your book. And in any case, I hope that these stories can reach a wide audience beyond the Valley. And in doing so, people can get interested in the Valley in that way. 9 of the stories are about the Rio Grande Valley. 2 are about El Paso. So what I've been doing on Facebook is creating these book trailers that we record landmarks like the Lagomita Chapel. And I have a voiceover, an excerpt from the book going. We take these 30-second book trailers and boost the posts around the state, around the country. And I've been getting messages from people from California, from Colorado saying, wow, what is that? Where is that? Where can I go visit Lagomita Chapel? And so I think in addition to the book itself, we hope our multimedia can bring in a wide, diverse readership, not just to this fictional world in the book, but also here to the Rio Grande Valley to see the beauty of our culture.
Wow, so this book alone is attracting attention and bringing some focus to the Rio Grande Valley. That's awesome. That's awesome because as a region, we could always use a little bit of positive limelight. So that's thank you for that. We appreciate that as a community. So one more avenue, right, for people to learn about who we are, to realize that Texas goes beyond San Antonio, right? There's more South Texas than San Antonio is. So tell us about what we got to look forward to in the future. I mean, you got CSLAP, you just released a new book. Any other projects that you've got working on? Any other books? I know this one just came out, but anything going on for the future?
Yes. In terms of books, I actually have a new book coming out this month. The publication date just got released to me. It was initially going to be published in the fall. It got moved up to the summer from Texas A&M University Press. So this book is a historical memoir. I'm co-authoring it. It's on a South Texas Chicano movement activist who did so much for education, for the activist movement in the 1960s here in the Rio Grande Valley, but his story isn't quite known. So when I met this man in 2014, I was actually interning at the PSJ Family Engagement Program. He came in the last couple of days to train the parents to become leaders in the program. His name is Aurelio Montemayor. We connected automatically because he was an English major. I was an English major. He had mentioned an author offhand, and I noted, hey, I've read that author. And then we just connected over our love of literature and books and education. And it turns out we had a lot in common. So we stayed in touch through email, and then we became very good friends. And he slowly started telling me about his story, about how he became an English major, always wanted to be a writer, but then decided to be an educator along the border to uplift his people. And then he decided, the school is not enough. I need to go out to the streets and advocate for my people during the 1960s Chicano movement. And he did so much, from co-founding the first accredited Chicano college here in Mercedes called Colegio Jacinto Trevino, to creating his own weekend retreat that trained men to shut off these machismo notions of what it means to be a leader, so they can go into the Chicano movement more inclusive and bringing women along for the ride, called El Curso de la Raza. And that's the name of the book, El Curso de la Raza, The Education of Aurelio Manuel Montemayor. And I hope to get that out very soon. And I'm really proud of that book because although it's not my story to tell, Aurelio gave me free rein with the prose. So for 7 years, we would Zoom, we would call, we would email. He would tell me his story, and I would write it in memoir form. I had to encourage him, let's tell your story. Let's not just give a textbook account of how you founded this college or how you did all these things. Let people know the man behind the impact. That way, today, we can read his story and become inspired to make our own educational impact. In many ways, I see a lot of parallels between El Curso de la Raza and CSLAP. And so writing the book, I felt like I was writing my own story in some ways. That's also what motivated me to get started on my current project. During my State Board of Education campaign, I often told my own educational journey, and I often shared many stories from my kindergarten years to my LBJ years to my PSJ North years to my Princeton years. And I decided, well, I just finished telling Aurelio's story. Let me tell my story now. So I'm currently working on my own memoir called, tentatively, Scholarship Boy, A Fronterizo Story. It's based on the last short story in The River Runs, which is fiction, but there's a story in there called Scholarship Boy about a young man who's going to matriculate to Princeton, and he's trying to juggle what it means to be from a low-income background at home to being a Princeton student and not quite feeling at place anymore in either setting. So that happened to me. And so a lot of what I shared with you today, I'm going to be writing in my memoir and analyzing what it means to grow up poor, grow up here in the border in the 90s, and work hard in school, and then transition to a place like Princeton and what it did for me and what I do now through CSLAP.
Oh, we look forward to reading that book then. I mean, the story of someone who has such a strong passion for mentoring the youth in the area. We can't wait to read that. And I guess we got to read The River Runs too, right? That last story is going to give us a little bit of a hint, right? A little taste of what your book is going to be about. So that's interesting. We got to pick that up. That's The River Runs. When was this book released? I forgot to ask you that.
It's funny because there's all these different dates I got. So it's published through Prickly Pear Publishing out of Santa Fe, New Mexico, officially listed as April 5th, 2023. I didn't get the book until the end of April, and it wasn't officially in people's hands until early May. And so it was a very slow, delayed rollout. It's funny, when I first got my author copy, I actually noted that there was an error. So I was looking at the book, I was amazed. I noticed, wow, this book is what I always wanted it to be. And then I placed it on my bookshelf just to see how it would look with all my other books. And on the spine, I saw that the publisher had put The River Runs, Poems by Thomas Ray Garcia. And I had to call them and say, oh, stop the printing, stop the presses. There's an error. It says poems and they're stories. So I have a volume of my book that says Poems by Thomas Ray Garcia. And I keep it for posterity to share with people that when you get your book out, you want it to be in the best possible form possible. And it's always funny that you have two versions. You got the poems version and the short story version. And so that would cause a bit of a delay. I remember people messaging me, when is the book coming out? I thought it was going to come out early April. Yes, but that's Poems by Thomas Ray Garcia. You're going to get Stories by Thomas Ray Garcia. Just wait a couple weeks until they fix it. So I think April generally was the release month.
That's funny. That's an interesting story. You got to hold on to those. It's something for the trophy case, even though it was an error, but that makes things interesting. So we got a question for you, especially, I mean, it's relevant because you were able to get outside of the Valley, go to Princeton, be in the Northeast. So I got to ask you, especially because you do so much for the area. one thing I try to ask as many people as I can, what's one thing you love about the Rio Grande Valley? Tell me about the reason you're still here. What do you love about it?
I love how this area is defined by its diversity of ideas. Now, you might think, well, the valley is almost 95% Latino. It's not on the surface diverse. But within that 95%, there's Mexican Americans from all walks of life. I mean, there's white Mexican Americans like me. There's dark-skinned Latinos. There's Afro-Latinos. There's people who are otherwise not initially from the border. They're not Latino at all, but now they're living along the border and they share that fronterizo spirit and they appreciate the history and culture here. And it's that shared sense of setting, I think I love most about this place, that although we're all so different on the surface, we can all connect through that fronterizo spirit. I haven't quite experienced that living in other areas. I was a Princeton student. I went to UCLA in Los Angeles for graduate school, and there is a sense of community being a student, but I didn't quite feel like there was a Princeton or a New Jersey ethos. I didn't quite feel like there was a Los Angeles ethos. It was so diverse and different there. It was defined by how different it was. But here in the Valley, I love how we can all connect through the fact that we border another country, and our relationship to that country defines our bilingualism, our biculturalism, so many things that make us in between two worlds. And living in between two worlds with all these people, I think, creates a special feeling of togetherness amongst everyone, despite how different we are internally.
Okay, thank you for that. We appreciate that. Oh, well, I got one more question for you. It's a little bit of trivia. You graduated from PSG North in 2012. Is that correct?
Yes.
How did the football team do that year? Do you remember that?
I remember going to the games for the first time. I think they did pretty well, didn't they? To my knowledge.
I have no idea.
I have no idea. I like to think they did well, at least in my heart. I remember basketball, women's basketball did very well. I used to be in cross country. And so cross country, we never had those big crowds out there cheering us on as runners. So my senior year, I started going to the football games, the basketball games, just to be there cheering on my friends. So I like to think football did okay. I don't know the data off the top of my head, but I do know women's basketball that year was pretty exceptional. And I know a couple good friends like Bree and Cassie and Brenda who I remember cheering. I'm like, wow, you guys are doing amazing history breaking things here. So basketball, women's, I remember that.
Okay, yeah, nice. I just asked because I remember like towards the end of my high school years, 13, 14, 15, the Raiders took most of the Bear Raider rivalry games. So I was thinking, man, from what I remember, the Raiders were doing pretty good during that time. So I just wanted to just mess with you on that one, see how their record was your senior year. But yeah, I mean, if the basketball team was, if they were the ones who were excelling, then that's all you can ask for, right? As long as one of the sports is doing good.
Right. I will give a shout out to Raiders cross country. I mean, I have a lot of respect for everybody in cross country and track. It's not the most visually attractive sport. I mean, if you're a spectator, you're out there at the field, out on a early Saturday morning, just yelling at runners running by. It's not as exciting as watching football or basketball. And of course, running these races takes such a mental toll on you, and all the miles that these runners run every week. I mean, it's amazing work. I used to run cross country under Coach Figueroa. And I guess as a preview to the first short story in the River Runs called Seventh Man, I mean, Coach Fig used to run us like Spartans. We used to run between 50, 60 miles a week. We used to run these crazy workouts where we would race 6 miles in order to train for 3 miles on a Saturday. We would go quicker pace in our workouts than we could run in the race itself. So I used to joke with Coach that when he would come to us after the race and say, "What happened? You guys were better during the week during the workouts." I said, "Yeah, because you're racing us during the workouts." So there's unofficial evidence that we're better than we are, but we're just so burnt out by Saturday. He's like, "Okay, take tomorrow off, come back Monday, do another easy 10. So that, I think, trains you in a certain way, not just physically, because I still am a runner today. I do half marathons, but mentally as well, that you come back to that team every morning, you wake up before dawn and you do that run. I mean, that alone is such a connecting force. I mean, there's nothing like it. I can't explain it. When you share that ritual with all these young men And each of us go our own way after high school, but I think we carry that with us as runners.
Yeah, and that working hard mentality really it stays with you, right? You apply it to different aspects of life. Working, especially as a long distance runner. I mean, I did track in middle school. That's all. That's it. Ninth grade, I was not on the team, but I still remember that. What the coaches tell you about pushing and working hard, it means something. Maybe as a kid you're like, oh, all right, coach, I'm just dying here, right? Just give me some water or something. But you take a lot of that with you, so that's awesome. I mean, obviously, you definitely did, right? That you're working long distance to make a difference here in the Valley with CSLAP. The community is going to start seeing the difference that your program is making. So we look forward to seeing what else is coming, right? We anticipate and we look forward to seeing what else you got coming down the line for us, especially that new book. Now that you gave us a little taste of that, I'm going to be on the lookout for that one. I'll keep my eyes peeled. Barnes & Noble, right? You said that's one place where I can go. I'll keep my eye out for that one.
And I thank you for this, Samuel. I mean, giving me the platform to share my story on this podcast. I mean, that's part of the work. You're also defining the narratives of this region. And if more people from our region did that, I think we could truly transform the reality down here. The fact that you remember those CSLAP presentations from back in 2014 and 15, that speaks volumes to me. That really is music to my ears, that our impact is there. And there will be ripples of hope along the line. It takes a while to go to and through college, but I think as you carry these stories with you, you remember the person that was there for you. You remember that mentor who gave you that conversation that changed your life. You remember those opportunities along the way. And I think if each of us carry that ethos with us, no matter where we go, I think that's really what it means to be a fronterizo. You carry the borderlands with you. There's a special element of what it means to be from the border. And I think part of that is that we care about each other. We want to uplift each other. And so if you can bring that with you, no matter where you go, that is what it means to carry the borderlands with you. And I think that does good to everybody.
Yeah, we're all working together to make the Valley a better place, right? So thank you for your contributions to that effort. And it was great talking with you. It's exciting times, right? Especially as a new published author. We can only imagine what that feels like. So congratulations on all your work. We look forward to seeing what else you got coming on down the line. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, Samuel.
Appreciate it. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Don't forget to follow the show on social media for updates on episodes, interactive content, and more opportunities to grow together. We'll see you again next week on your podcast, The Rio Grande Podcast. Stay safe. Take care.